Welcome back everyone to my 5th devlog on the Necrotic Trials. Today I'll be diving into a mix of quality of life improvements and game design discussions. Let's begin by talking about some map changes. I've removed the hallway design, replacing it with a simpler square layout. Accommodating for the lost space, I've increased the map size, opting for an odd number layout. This ensures a distinct middle tile, and let's be honest, it satisfies my OCD. Another change I made to the map is the inclusion of Invalid Tiles. Initially, the system had a binary approach to tile displays. Green tile for selectable options, and no tile for unselectable ones. While straightforward, this system could lead to confusion. For example, if the player hovers over an ability with no viable targets in range. To address this, I've added a third state, the red Invalid Tile. This tile comes into play when a spot on the map could potentially be selected under certain conditions, but is currently unavailable, whereas the blank tile would be used in situations where that spot could never be selected. The final map change is a rework to how I draw the pathfinding arrows. A massive shout out to Hi who gave me this improvement. I really do appreciate it. The math behind it might seem a little confusing, but it's actually simpler than all my if statements. The main change involves the use of the trigonometry function atan2, or arctangent for short. Like its name suggests, it takes two parameters, x and y, and then spits out the angle between the positive x-axis and that point, measuring counterclockwise. Effectively, this maps a point in 2D space onto the unit circle, giving us a direction. Knowing this, we can essentially replace all the shameful if statements I had previously and just rotate the tile with respect to its atan2 rotation. I believe I explained this right. If you want any more info, go check out Hi's comment from the last video. And once again, thank you very much, I really appreciate it. Moving on, the hotbar has seen two notable improvements. Rather than having the ability frames vanish when changing the selected unit, I now maintain a static number of frames which fill with the abilities of the selected unit. This provides consistency, especially between units with varying ability counts. Additionally, there's now an indicator highlighting the active ability on the hotbar, something I probably should have implemented a long time ago. And lastly, I've made some animation tweaks. Units now have spawn animations as well as death animations. And I also created a new ability graph node called Hit Animation that plays an animation on the targets when they get hit. This was originally done with the Play Animation node, but by separating it out as its own node, I can play different animations depending on the direction the unit was hit. Shifting gears now, let's delve into some game design. This one's going to be pretty wordy, so bear with me. Let's begin by talking about the introduction of a new unit. Originally, my plan was to place you, the player, in the role of an unseen necromancer, orchestrating events without a physical representation on the battlefield. However, as I kept brainstorming, I identified a significant issue with this approach. The core problem was the inevitable quit moment that this design fostered. Imagine, if you will, the demise of a key, powerful unit, the one that's been carrying your team through thick and thin. You realize that there's no coming back, and the rest of your army will soon follow. In a situation where the game over state is linked to the extermination of your entire army, it feels discouraging to continue. You're tempted to just quit and embark on a fresh run, rather than wasting time watching the inevitable unfold. This is why I decided to add the Necromancer as a distinct playable unit. This change reshapes the game over condition. It's now linked to the Necromancer's demise, not the deaths of all your units. This creates a dynamic where, even if your entire army is wiped out, the Necromancer's ability to summon units offers a glimmer of hope. It turns potential quit moments into thrilling comebacks. You're no longer just commanding units, you're also protecting your central character, making different strategic decisions that can affect the Necromancer directly. I've also made another noteworthy, albeit less drastic, alteration to how I treat souls. Previously, I envisioned souls as a resource, akin to mana, where one soul equated to a single unit in your army. However, I soon realized this approach isn't very compatible with the roguelike environment, where combat frequently resets across numerous encounters. One could argue I could take the route of the older Fire Emblem games, where units spawn semi-randomly around a spawn point. However, this kills the immersion of summoning units, which is a core mechanic of the game. My solution to this is to treat souls as items. Each soul will contain an array of information, such as health or weapon type. You can think of this similar to how Pokeballs house Pokemon. Crucially, You'll be able to hold more souls than you can actively deploy on the battlefield, thereby setting up interesting strategic scenarios. For example, you might reserve a powerful soul for a future encounter you know is coming, adding an element of forward planning into your strategies. But now comes the tricky part. How does the player obtain souls? I don't have an answer for this, and I was actually hoping to hear your guys' thoughts and suggestions. I've come up with 4 potential ideas, each with their own unique advantages and drawbacks. The first idea is a soul reaping ability. This could manifest as a single use per combat instance execute ability that the Necromancer unit possessed, instantly slaying the enemy unit below a certain health threshold and stealing their soul. While this sounds interesting in theory, it could lead to the meta strategy being hoarding that skill for stronger enemies with higher amounts of HP. My second idea involves introducing a blood gauge, which is a shared resource generated by all units. This gauge could be filled by using specific skills, exploring particular dungeon rooms, or even consuming corpses. Blood could then be spent on casting ultimate abilities or reaping the souls of fallen enemies. The main advantage here is that this introduces a strategic decision. Do you consume the corpse to replenish blood and lose the soul, or spend blood to acquire a new soul? My third idea is a soul link ability. The Necromancer forms a link with a unit, and is immobilized and unable to perform any actions while maintaining this link. After a variable amount of turns, depending on the strength of the linked unit, you would successfully steal the unit's soul. The downside for this is very similar to the soul reaping concept. Players might hold off using this ability until they encounter a potent enemy they want to execute. However, it does introduce a balancing factor of leaving your main character defenseless for several turns when linked to a formidable opponent. And finally, for my last option, each unit's demise would result in a soul drop. This could either be a guaranteed outcome or be based on a chance system. For this approach, the Necromancer unit would have to physically move to the location of the soul to harvest it. This approach considerably simplifies the soul collection process, transforming it into a game of tactical positioning rather than ability management. However, it also might introduce a layer of randomness that could either enhance the roguelike nature of the game, creating exciting moments of unexpected bounty, or lead to frustration if the soul drop chances are unfavorably low. I'm also considering weaving in some of the previously mentioned mechanics into this last approach. For instance, the blood gauge can come into play here. Maybe you can spend accumulated blood to increase the likelihood of a soul drop upon a kill, or perform other modifications on an already dropped soul. That being said, I haven't yet finalized the direction I want to take with this. The final design decision I've been grappling with is to balance the naturally long game lengths of turn-based games with the shorter, intense bursts of gameplay that most roguelike games are known for. Due to the nature of the Necrotic Trials, with 8 bosses to defeat, the 7 deadly sins and the devil himself, it's not unlikely that gameplay could extend into multiple hours for each run. This lengthy gameplay, while immersive, may pose a problem when combined with the roguelike Perma Death. Imagine playing for 3 to 5 hours, making significant progress, only to have all your effort wiped clean with a single mistake. This could easily create another one of those quit moments I want to avoid. Sure, you could resort to save scumming, but in my opinion, that's less of a solution and more of a band-aid fix. It doesn't truly solve the issue at hand, but rather shifts the responsibility onto the player. My current solution is to add checkpoints after each boss, turning it into a semi-roguelike. This means, should you succumb to the challenges of a particular floor, you wouldn't be thrown all the way back to the beginning, but would simply need to restart at the beginning of the current floor. This approach, I believe, strikes a fair balance between the punishing nature of roguelike games and the desire to keep gameplay engaging and fun. But I want to stress, this solution is not set in stone. The effectiveness and need for this mechanic will only truly reveal itself further into development, once we get a sense of how brutal dying is through playtesting. But I wanted to share this with you now, as it's something that's been in my mind lately. That wraps up everything I have for this devlog. I've navigated more towards game design discussion today rather than focusing on concrete development, but solidifying the game's design and addressing potential hurdles early on is crucial. Remember, much of this is hypothetical for now, and the true test will come from actual gameplay. For the next devlog, I'll be diving into the mechanics of soul collection and summoning, based on the decisions I end up making from our discussion today. Furthermore, I'll be looking into ways of better distinguishing player units from enemy units, as right now they look pretty much identical. Before signing off, I have one more announcement to make. I'm considering participating in the 2023 GMTK Game Jam this weekend. If I do participate, I'll aim to create a video about it, just for a fun side project. Whether I participate or not will likely depend on the Game Jam theme. If it sparks any ideas, I'll be there. So if that's something that interests you, stay tuned. As always, I appreciate any input and feedback, so don't hesitate to leave your thoughts in the comments or join the Discord. Until next time, thank you all for watching.